Hey guys, it's Cayley. I'm back with another What Sold From Last Week video. I actually skipped last week because I was on vacation and I am back. So I figured we would actually cover the last 2 weeks so I can share some exciting sales with you because I did have some pretty cool things that you guys will want to know about that sold in the last 2 weeks and I didn't want to skip it. If you guys are new to my channel, I do What Sold videos pretty much every single week unless I'm on vacation. And I go over things that are selling quickly on sites like eBay, Poshmark, and Depop, as well as my highest price sales for the last week, and just in general, some noteworthy things to look out for. I've been reselling for 10 plus years. I started this as a side hustle and grew it to a full-time business. So if you're looking to do the same, either grow a side hustle and get some extra cash or grow it to a full-time business, consider subscribing down below because that is what I teach here on this channel. All right, let's dive right into those sales. Okay, starting with my fastest sales, I actually had so many that sold quickly over the last 2 weeks. And because I'm looking at 2 weeks, I've got a lot more to show you guys. But yeah, I had a ton that sold the exact same day within just one day, tons that sold within the last 2 weeks. I'm actually only going to be showing you some that sold between 0 and 2 days just because there are so many before we jump into the next section. And yeah, I love sharing these quick sales because sometimes they really surprise me on just exactly what is selling. And what I have found in the summertime months is that people tend to purchase lower ASP things, meaning they don't spend as much money per piece. And so I like showing these bread and butter items because I think that is what's selling during summer. And this was definitely true, but some surprising ones in my fastest sales over the last couple of weeks. So this first one sold within 0 days, the exact same day that I listed. This is a Victoria's Secret women's slip dress. I use keywords such as baby doll, mesh, midi in there, and this item kind of speaks for itself. A lot of people are looking for Victoria's Secret slip dresses, especially Y2K style or actual Y2K ones. And then if you have some extra details like I had here with a mesh panel, it can certainly add value to it. I ended up selling this for $29 on Poshmark, and that made my earnings $23.20. Keep your eye out for Victoria's Secret slip dresses. Next up, this is another slip dress. This is actually Zara, and this is not a brand I pick up often. It does not perform very well for me, but whenever I see a really great style-based piece or a factor stacking, meaning there's lots of factors, great trending factors in one piece, I will look it up and consider it. So this one was a size extra large. It was new with tags. I do like looking for their longer length dresses. So that was the main reason that I looked at this one. This one was a maxi dress. It had a cowl neck and it was patchwork. And overall, just the silhouette that people are looking for. Again, this looks a lot like that Victoria's Secret slip dress cut that I just showed you. Because this was Zara, I ended up listing it a lot lower and it sold the exact same day for an offer of $22. Maybe I could have gotten a little bit more for it, but again, I am just very realistic about what I have, and I recommend you guys do the same. It is so much better for me to keep that cash flow going and move things quickly than to try to squeeze as much money as possible. And unfortunately, Zara is just not a brand that sells for that much. So really excited about this $22 sale in 0 days. This next one also sold the exact same day that I got it listed. This is a brand that has been selling really well for me during spring and summer. It is Faherty. They typically have like beachy, preppy, coastal things, typically lighter colored, and they typically use great materials. This is an organic cotton gauzy tank top. Now, I sell quite a bit of tank tops, but when I'm looking at something that's less substantial, such as a tank top, because it doesn't have sleeves, sometimes it's cropped, just way less material, that means that there's going to have to be multiple layers of great factors in my mind, in order for a tank top to sell at the price that I would want it to sell for, which is at least $25. And so because of that, I make sure to factor stack heavily into these lower substantial pieces. So with this being a tank top, some things that elevated this one is great brand, people know, size large, it's organic cotton, and it's got a gauzy texture to it. All of those things had to happen in order for this to sell for $25. So keep that in mind, especially in spring and summer where we are leaning towards more lower ASP pieces. Make sure you've got those factors there to really bring that value back up to what you need. Because if you're trying to sell a piece that's not really there for $25, like it's just going to sit in your store. I used keywords on this such as gauzy organic cotton, and coastal. I didn't need to do much like keywording with this just because again, it is a pretty decent brand and it sold for $25 on Poshmark, making my earnings $20. I did notice Poshmark was popping off these last couple of weeks. Most of my quickest sales actually happened on Poshmark, which was kind of surprising. Okay, next up, we have one that might look familiar to you guys. I just showed this in a recent thrift haul. This is the brand Dale of Norway, which is a fantastic brand to look for, especially in winter. They're known for their wools. They're typically made in Ireland, and really any like made in Ireland sweater company I would be looking up. This was also the Oslo Sweater Shop. I don't know if that's a collab. Yeah, it says especially made for. It was a really great piece. Mixed prints within it really helped to elevate the value on this one. The reason you guys might remember this is because I picked it up with a humongous flaw, which is that it was missing its bottom two clasps. So we actually had to remove them, and it's a pretty huge flaw. It also had a couple of loose knit threads in the armpits, which I made sure to disclose all of that. But all of that to say, had it not had all those flaws, I probably would have listed it for around $60 to $70. But with those two major flaws, again, I'm being realistic about what I'm pricing things for. And I think I had this priced at like $35 maybe. Somebody sent me an offer for $25, and knowing all of those mistakes in my head, I said, yes, I will take $25. So I went ahead and moved this piece. Again, that happened the exact same day that I listed it. Next up, this one also might look familiar to you. Again, if you're not already subscribed to me, I also share thrift hauls. So you'll see some of these pieces and get to watch their transition as they get listed and them selling. So consider subscribing down below if you want to see them before they reach this stage. So this is another one that sold from a recent thrift haul. This is a men's J. Crew oarsman tag, pretty rare anorak jacket. I saw tons of these, not tons, but I saw a good amount of these selling for around like 85 to even some of them I think went close to 200. I decided to price mine kind of in the middle, and this ended up selling the exact same day that I listed it, even with a spot on the hood, for $125 on Poshmark. That made my earnings $100. There are pieces like this that I come across all the time that resellers miss that will sell for $100 plus, but they just don't know what it is that they're looking at. They don't know the item is valuable. And so that's one of the goals on my channel, is to try and, with these what sold videos, with these thrift hauls, show you guys what you could be picking up so that you're not passing on it like everybody else. But I cannot tell you how many times I find stuff like this, but you got to know like what would make something a potentially overlooked item. Like, I don't look up everything anymore, but potential indicators. Why would this potentially be something that I need to look up because it might be rare? And if you want to get really caught up on that, that is what I do inside of Resellers Edge University, which is a reseller community that I co-founded. You're invited to join that anytime. The link is down below. But I teach all the strategies that I use to get to six figures. And this is definitely one of them, is just indicators of quality, picking up on things that other people miss, so you can get sales like this all the time. Super happy with this. My exact title for this was J. Crew Oarsman Men's Vintage Denim Anorak Hooded Jacket, size M, fisherman and preppy. Definitely a fisherman look on this one, but I'm so happy this sold so quickly. Okay, next up, something else I've been selling really well, and I mentioned it in actually a lot of these. You're seeing that I mentioned on what I'm picking up for spring and summer. I showed 3 like categories you guys can look for in a recent video. Linen, specifically men's linen items, pants, blazers do really, really well for me. And you're going to see that in today's video. This is Polo by Ralph Lauren, which is a good brand to look for in general for men's pants. And these ones were a pair of linen blend. So I priced a little bit lower because of that blend pants, not full linen. I use keywords like vintage, pleated, heritage, and plaid. In the description, I use old money, academia, business, and beach, which sounds like some of those are kind of opposite words, but it's really the application in which people might be using them, wanting to make sure to include everything so that it can, expand to multiple buyers who might be wanting this. I think I listed this for around 35 and I accepted an offer of $30. It took just one day to sell, and that made my earnings $24 on Posh. All right, next one. This was another super quick sale. This sold just one day after being listed. This is definitely a style-based piece. And this is a vintage label, no-name brand. Would not recommend memorizing that, but it had some good elements to it. I consider this kind of like a meh piece. Good elements, but also not like the epitome of some of the different aesthetics. This gave me like kind of pirate. Oh yeah, we actually put pirate in here. Top, but exaggerated flare sleeves right now are something that I'm looking at and seeing if I can lean those into some of the major aesthetics. Some of the keywords that I used were pirate, whimsy goth, witchy, renaissance, grunge, and steampunk. We just had this listed for around 25 and I quickly accepted an offer of 20, making my earnings 16. Again, being cognizant of what I actually have. This was by no means like a super stunner piece. And so just treating it like what it is, which is a bread and butter piece, accepting $20 very quickly so that I can reinvest that money. Next up, this is a great brand to look for right now. It is Ariat. They have a ton of bolos within this brand. This is another one people overlook pretty often. This is actually a women's Ariat tech jacket. I listed this for $55 on Depop. I add a few dollars for both Depop and Poshmark to account for offers that I can't turn off. On eBay, I don't have offers turned on most of my items. And so that's why we add. And this sold within just one day also for an offer of $33, which I accepted. That made my earnings on Depop. Great thing about them is they don't take as many fees. I made $27.43 on this jacket. I definitely sell Ariat a lot. And again, I think it's one people overlook quite often. So next time you see Ariat, especially if it's a more substantial piece, definitely be looking that up. All right, next up, another Poshmark sale. This is a category I've mentioned to you guys I've been testing out, which are like pull-on flare or boot cut pants. Been doing really, really well, especially with brands like I don't know very well. This one was a newer one to me. This one actually I think has a decent sell-through rate. Is Warrior Within Designs, made in USA. This is a velvet burnout pull-on flare pant. I use keywords such as velvet burnout, whimsy goth, and flare leg. I listed this for around 30 on Posh. It sold for 25, making my earnings 20, and this sold within just one day of being listed. I'll continue to update you guys on these flare pants, but for sure, I've been selling a ton of them. A lot of athletic style ones too. All right, next up, this one's also another bread and butter that sold super quickly. This sold in just one day. This is Marc Jacobs. Don't come across this brand very often. Sometimes people hear it and they're like, oh, it's designer, I have to get it. But if you check comps, actually not the best comps. This one was more of a factor stacking piece. It was a larger hobo style bag. It was a great color. It was kind of slouchy, like that very hobo look, very on trend. Very realistic with what we have, so we priced lower, and I accepted an offer of $30 on this one. It did have a couple of marks, and it sold in just one day, and that made my earnings $24 on this piece. Next up, this was one of my higher price sales. This is a very niche vintage goth brand. It's called Lip Service, and some of their pieces can go for crazy money. I've sold multiple Lip Service pieces for over $100, and then there's been some that I've sold for only $25. It just, again, it really depends on what you have. This was a really fantastic piece. This was a skeleton bones looking mesh top. I had this listed. I think this sold for my full asking price of $135 on Poshmark, which is crazy. We use keywords such as goth, grunge, emo, punk, alternative. And yeah, $135. And that made my earnings on Poshmark $108. I really love selling these meshy tops, not just, this is obviously an elevated brand that people look for, so it makes it a little bit more rare. But in general, mesh tops I sell all the time. Okay, next up, this is a Bolo brand. In the men's department, it's called Poncho. These are really easy to overlook. They're kind of like a fishing shirt feel, like athletic-y feel. And sometimes they have prints, but sometimes they don't. Very plain looking tag, very high sell-through rate though. This shirt was also a larger size and it was printed, so I listed it for more than I would some of the other ones. I listed this for $60 on eBay and it sold in just 2 days for my full asking price of around that $60, making my order earnings $45.71. Next up, another Poshmark sale and some more linen. This is a Ralph Lauren men's linen blazer. Any linen blazer, I'm looking up. If you want to learn more about what I pick up in linen, go back and watch that video that I recently put out about 3 categories you can look for spring and summer. But yeah, all throughout this video, you're going to see those 3 things selling. This is a Ralph Lauren men's size 40R white linen blazer. I do think that white can perform better just because you can really lean it into what I put in the description: coastal, wedding, event, old money, things like that. This one ended up selling for $51 on Poshmark, and that made my order earnings $40.80. All right, more of a bread and butter one. This is Tommy Bahama. I do like selling Tommy Bahama in spring and summer, but I have to be really picky on what I get. Definitely check your comps. Not everything sells well. This is a UPF, meaning sun protection, golf style jacket in a size extra large. So lots of like factor stacking there. I used keywords such as UPF, golf, tropical, resort vacation, and I even put country club and preppy in the description. And this sold for my expected price of $25, making my earnings $20. That only took 2 days to sell. And then last one of my fast sales, and like I said, I had so many, you guys, so many fast sales. I've only shown you things that have sold the same day or next day or the day after that at this point. But I do want to get into some other sections. So this will be my last one of the fast sales and we'll move on to the high price sales. This one is an item that I chose to leave the brand out of. The brand is Dots, not a great brand. And so because I had better keywords that could replace it, I went ahead and did that in my title. So my full title for this one is Y2K halter top, size large, Bratz, vintage, baby doll, chunky, bling, floral, boho, and going out. This one did have a little bit of a flaw. The inside lining, the like bra area, had some holes in it. So I had to make sure to note that. But it was just a really great Y2K top with some different features that I know people like. So I listed this one for $30 on Depop. Someone sent me an offer for $22, which I accepted, and that made my earnings $18.12 on Depop. Tops like these are something I come across all the time. They're another commonly overlooked item. Y2K tops, Y2K dresses do very, very well with those. And so if it's a category that you can, figure out, you're going to just, not only are you going to find them easy, but you're also going to sell them easy once you know what you're doing. And they're really great for just padding sales with those bread and butter prices and wash, rinse, repeat, as I always say. Okay, next up, some of my highest price sales. This was one of my faves over the last couple of weeks. It was one I definitely wanted to make sure to show you guys, which is why I chose to pull 2 weeks worth since we missed that 1 week while I was on vacation. This is a Steve Madden jacket, another follow-up. This is a gorgeous leather and faux fur lined coat. Definitely unique details to this one. I actually found the exact comp for this, which it's a style-based piece, so I normally don't find the exact comp, but I saw an exact comp for around $250. So that's what I priced mine for. I did include best offer on this just with us going into warmer weather. Not a lot of people picking up leather fur trim jackets. So just being, again, realistic and mindful about exactly what I have, the demand of it, and the season that we're in. And so because of that, I decided to go ahead and slap best offer on that just to make sure that this is going to move quickly, because my goal is always to sell things in 90 days or less. This actually sold in 62 days, and we're also like in the dead of like 90-degree weather, which is pretty awesome. Shows you just how much demand there is. Someone sent me an offer for $225, which I happily accepted. And that made my earnings on eBay $171.75. Crazy insane. I think I paid like around $10 for this at a thrift store. It was sitting there. It wasn't anything new. Again, something a lot of resellers would pass on. You gotta know like what's in demand, factors, and what buyer is going to be looking for this. So my exact title for this was Steve Madden Vintage Y2K Leather Penny Lane Coat, size extra large jacket, faux fur, brats, and black. And I used many other keywords in the description as well. But I couldn't be happier with this large flip. It definitely helped to bring up some of those sales for spring and summer since most of the stuff isn't selling for those higher prices. All right, next up, another higher price sale. This one actually, I somehow missed it for the fastest sales. So we're going to include it in this section so you guys can see it, but this actually sold the exact same day that I got it listed. So 0 days to sell. This is a men's Y2K full zip hoodie. This is a skateboarding brand called Fallen. You definitely want to know about this brand. Not very common to come across, but if you do come across it, then you're obviously going to want to get it. But a lot of these men's Y2K skateboarding brands do really well. And so I just look up all of them basically, but look how plain this looks. It would be very easy to overlook this at the thrift store. So this is a men's full zip extra large Fallen skateboarding apparel Y2K hoodie. I had it listed for $150 on eBay. It did sell for my full asking price again the same day that I listed it. I think it sold within like an hour, I want to say, of being listed. And that made my earnings on eBay $114.38. Just a reminder, I do promoted listings on eBay, so I do have an additional fee on top of stuff that other people may not have. So when you're hearing the gross amount to the net amount, just keep that in mind. I promote my listings so that items sell faster. All right, next up, this is another great item. This is the brand Zadig and Voltaire. This is a fantastic brand, but it really depends on what you have as to how quickly it's going to sell. This one was a new with tags cashmere sweater. You can see that it retailed for $528. Normally, I don't let retail prices get to me, but that's expensive. This one is very classic of Zadig and Voltaire. They typically have like distressing. So if you see holes in a sweater, might be manufactured that way. 100% cashmere and yeah, new with tags. It was a size extra small, so I kept that in mind. And this one sold for $135 on Poshmark, which was my full asking price. That made my earnings $108 on Poshmark. You guys have been asking me, do I do promoted listings on Poshmark? I do not. I tried it out a couple times and did not see a good return. I don't recommend people use promoted listings on Poshmark. I don't think that it helps your sales any more than your organic listings. So personally, I would say save your money. But yeah, only a 20% fee for me on Poshmark. All right, next up was another high price sale. This one sold on Depop. This one was a Ralph Lauren silk skirt. Ralph Lauren, or Ralph Lauren in general, all these brands, if you compare them with great materials, great factors, there is some money to be made for sure in Ralph Lauren. Bethany actually did a deep dive in Reseller's Edge recently that I need to go back and watch, which is an updated Ralph Lauren deep dive showing the exact things that are in there. And I'm not sure if these skirts are on there, but I for sure would be looking for longer length skirts by Ralph Lauren and all of their lines, especially if they're silk. Skirts are one of those categories, again, that often get overlooked. People don't know how to sell them. They don't like looking for them, but I find skirts to be one of my most profitable categories. Maybe it's because it's abundant because nobody looks at it. So I find bolos all the time. I don't know, but really love this one. This is a size 12 petite. I use keywords such as asymmetric, fairy, 90s, and scarf because it was like a silk scarf print. I listed this for $135 on Depop. It took only 7 days to sell and it sold on an offer for $108. That made my earnings on Depop 9103. Such a beautiful piece. Again, would not be able to get this much if it didn't have all of those factors included. So don't just go pick up any Ralph Lauren skirt. You definitely want to have the right factors there. Okay, next up, this was a beast to list, to ship, everything. This was a handmade Ren Fair, like Renaissance dress. It was so heavy. I think the thing weighed, let's actually see. I was going to say about 5 pounds. Yeah, it weighed about 5 pounds in total. Beautiful piece, like epitome of what somebody's looking for. But man, it was a lot to deal with, to get photographed, all that stuff, but had a lot of interest in this. It also did not have brand or a size, so we had to measure for it, which was also difficult to do. We estimated this being a size 5X, which I've learned plus size in the Renaissance realm is actually like it adds value. So I was happy to see that. I listed this for $100. It took only 29 days to sell, and that made my earnings on eBay $75.94. I'm not saying pick up every Renaissance handmade item, but definitely Renaissance style is very on trend right now because there's lots of festivals and things going on. All right, next up, a fantastic brand to look for in footwear. Its popularity has like never gone away. It's Birkenstock. This is a pair of men's Birkenstocks, which typically increase value. With Birkenstocks, you definitely want to look up the exact style name of the piece that you have, or else you could be leaving a lot of money on the table. So if I just looked up Birkenstocks men's two-strap sandal or men's leather sandal or whatever, I'm going to get very different comps than if I were to look up what the style name was, which was Arizona two-strap sandal, and great comps on that. So we listed this for I think around like $90-ish. It sold on an offer for $76 on Poshmark. It only took 3 days to sell, and my order earnings were $60.80 on these. Next up, this was a fun sale. This was a recent vintage t-shirt that I found. This is a Dragon Ball Z vintage 90s shirt. I do really love selling vintage t-shirts. It's one of my favorite things to find. Unfortunately, there are very few things that sell well within vintage t-shirts anymore. I used to be able to sell like so much, so many subjects, so many categories. For me, it's really narrowed in now to like specific TV shows or movies or bands. And if I'm not finding that, I don't find good enough comps on it. And I do think you can, for the most part, rely on comps for vintage t-shirts. So I did some comping on this one. It had a decent sell-through rate, not super high. So I kept that in mind. I did think that I had a more rare shirt with multiple characters on it and from the 90s. I listed this at $125 or best offer. It sold in just 48 days. Someone sent me an offer for $75, which I accepted. Whenever I'm slapping best offer onto something, I'm really willing to accept like quite a wide range of offers just because I'm not really sure where to price it out. So 75 was good with me and I accepted. That made my order earnings $57.63 on this t-shirt. Okay, next up, this is one of my favorite brands to find. It is also commonly overlooked. It is John G. Running. These are a pair of men's tights. They were called the groundwork tights. These are so difficult for me to figure out. Were these men's? Were these women's? I figured out that they were men's running tights, which actually aided in the price. But yeah, it did take me a moment. So if you find them and they look like leggings, they might actually be men's tights. So keep that in mind. This brand is known for their technology for running, and they have a very, very high sell-through rate on eBay. These men's running tights only took 77 days to sell. I was lucky enough to find them new with tags, and they sold for $75 on Poshmark, making my earnings $57.32. All right, next up, here's another Faherty item. Excuse me. This one is a lot more substantial than that tank top I showed you. Faherty does have some specific styles that have a really good sell-through rate. So I would recommend if you see something a little bit more substantial, definitely figure out the exact style name of it. This one was called the High Ridge Twill Studio Jacket. It was also a men's size extra, extra large, which is going to significantly increase the value. I listed this for $75. It was pre-owned and it sold for our full asking price of $75. That made my earnings on eBay $57.32. Next up, this is completely style-based. This is the brand Newport News, which I come across fairly often, but hardly ever pick up. But I had to get this piece because it had so many great factors going for it. I could lean it into so many things. It was just such a stunning, unique piece. This is like a velvet duster coat. I also use the word cloak in the title because it was very cloaky. I also use keywords like whimsy goth, Ren Fair, and steampunk. This could be used in so many different cosplay outfits or just like style outfits. You can wear it with the belt, without the belt. I made sure to show like all the different ways that it could be worn. This one was a plus size and I listed this for $75. This was definitely one of those pieces I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to get, but I didn't want to put best offer on it because I knew it was worth quite a bit. So I settled at 75 and it took 87 days to sell, which is within my 90-day goal. And it sold on an offer to Watcher for $67.40. That made my order earnings $51.83. So happy with that. Again, I think the stuff like this is commonly overlooked, especially velvet in the middle of summer. Next up, this is a Bolo brand. It is called Patricia Nash. They're known for their like Western boho leather goods. Here is their logo here, so you might be able to identify it. They typically do have like a muted floral or something to it, or sometimes just plain leather. This one did have a little bit of wear to it. So I made sure to keep that in mind. Here's the Patricia Nash label. I listed this for $65. It was called the Poppy Shoulder Tote Bag. I do think handbags, finding the exact style is typically a good idea. This sold in just 21 days on an offer for around $58. I have Nifty, my cross-listing tool, automatically set up to send offers to watchers. And so a lot of these sales that did sell on offers were just automatic captures because we're sending them out so close to when people are interested in it. And so sold for $58 on the automatic offer from Nifty. And that made my earnings on eBay $51.83. Oops, sorry, $43.60. Sold for $58.43.60. All right, next up, this one was one of the items that actually took the longest to sell, but it was still one of my higher price sales. This is called Hill House, the nap dress. It's one of their styles that they're known for. This was a really great item. It was longer length. It was linen. It was midi. It was tiered. Had a really interesting print to it. The reason this took so long to sell, it actually took 236 days to sell, getting close to a year, was because I initially priced it way too high. It was one of those things where I saw some higher solds, but I didn't see the print that I had. So I was like, this might be more rare. Let me go ahead and list it high. I wish that I didn't because it took forever to sell. And I listed it, I think originally for a little over $100. Because it sat so long, I received an offer for $55 and I just accepted, let me get this thing moved. And that made my earnings $44 on Poshmark. If you guys come across this brand, especially the nap dress, it is worth picking up, but just don't price super high. Some of them do go for a little bit more, but most of them are around that $50 mark. All right, next up, I actually got this for free. It was something somebody donated to us. It is a pair of Carhartt coveralls. I would say these workwear canvasy coveralls in multiple different brands do tend to perform well. This one I listed closer to about $60. It did take a little bit longer to sell than I would have liked. I dropped the price and it ended up selling on an offer for $45, making my earnings $34.37 with a $0 cost of goods. I am thrilled with that. But yeah, keep your eye out for these utility coveralls, and they do, other brands could potentially perform well also. Just use that keyword in your comp coveralls. All right, moving on to just some noteworthy items, things that didn't fall in the first two categories that I wanted to make sure to show you guys before we moved on to the next week. This is one of my favorite sales from last week. It is Old Navy. I love this brand. This was my best selling brand last year. And even this year, I'm just learning more things that I can sell within this brand. This is a Y2K top. Honestly, I think it could have been any brand. As long as it were Y2K in the style, it could have been any brand, but people definitely like Old Navy, and so they trust the quality of it. This was a Henley top, Y2K for sure. I listed this for $40, believe it or not, on eBay because it just had such good features. Really reminded me of like a dupe for the Abercrombie and Fitch ones that people are looking for. And this only took 16 days to sell for my full asking price of $40. That made my earnings on eBay $30.62. Next up, I talked about linen quite a bit. I wanted to make sure to show you guys this brand. This is an overlooked linen brand called Poetry, and their linen pieces perform really well. This is a more substantial piece to wide leg linen pants in a larger size. I use keywords like wide leg, obviously, but I also use log and look and coastal. This one ended up selling on an offer for $38. And yeah, just a fantastic brand to look for in linen stuff. Again, commonly overlooked. I sold this in just 24 days for $38, and that made my earnings on Poshmark $30.40. All right, next up, another follow-up from a recent haul. This is Laura Ashley. This is a vintage like wool fringe style pleated skirt. Just lots of great details on this. It had some buckles on the side. It even had like a clothespin here. So there's lots of just different things going for it. I was very mindful that with this being wool, probably not something a lot of people are going to wear in summer. So I priced a little bit less than I wanted to just to make sure that it moved quickly. I listed this for $40. I used keywords like obviously pleated quilt, but equestrian being the biggest one. And it sold in just 13 days for the automatic nifty offer of around $36. And that made my earnings $26.80 on eBay. Next up, this is one of my favorite, I want to say bread and butter, but 35 to 40 bucks. Not really bread and butter. I think 30 to 40 is a little bit higher ASP, at least for clothing. And so I wouldn't even consider that, but it is something I come across often that people overlook. J. Crew blazers. This one is a sweater blazer. You guys know I've been selling these for years. This is called the Juliet collarless sweater blazer. It was merino wool. Pricing lower because of the wool. I listed it at $35, and it only took 47 days to sell on the automatic nifty offer for $31.40. That made my earnings $24.11. All right, next noteworthy sale. This is another style-based piece. This is just Forever 21. I sold this for full asking price of $30. I initially got this because it was crochet, it had patchwork detail, and it was a longer length dress. So lots of factor stacking and style-based elements there. And yeah, super quick sale, especially for Forever 21. This sold within just 57 days for that full asking price of around $30, making my order earnings on eBay $22.53. Another category I have been loving is belts. This is one of my favorite categories to look for at the thrift store and at the bins. This one was actually completely unbranded. I do think that belts is something that you can factor stack with regardless of brand and sell well. So this one was a tooled leather belt. It had like floral embossing on it, as well as a pretty nice buckle. It could be leaned into like ranch, rodeo, cowboy. I put all of those in my title. I listed this for $25 just because it was unbranded. It took only 38 days to sell for my full asking price, and that made my order earnings on eBay $19.05. All right, and then lastly of the noteworthy things before I share 3 things that just did not go well for me, is this brand called Cricket. This brand used to have over 100% sell-through rate for everything. I don't find that to be the case for every single piece, but if you have some factor stacking in there, specifically the larger sizes, this is an XXL. It's organic cotton. It's a longer sleeve polo. you can factor stack up to a 100% or higher sell-through rate, but it's a pretty good bread and butter brand to at least look up whenever you come across it. This Cricket men's long sleeve polo shirt I listed for $25. It took 44 days to sell, and it sold for my full asking price of $25. Great bread and butter. That made my order earnings on eBay $18.99. All right, moving on to a few things that did not go well for me so you guys can learn from my mistakes. I got 3 to show you here. This one is a pair of Dickies pants. Now, all 3 of these that I'm going to show you took approximately 200 to 300 days to sell. These were all pieces that were picked up by previous employees who used to source for me. And having them in my employment was a really good test of what it's like for newer sellers who are learning style-based sourcing, who are learning sell-through rate sourcing, who are learning factor stacking, to really understand where the problems lie and where they get hung up while they're sourcing, what the mental blocks are. And so all 3 of these pieces were sourced by previous employees of mine who were newly learning all 3 of those things. So let's take a look here and I'll tell you where they went wrong. They ultimately did end up selling, obviously, but not for as quickly or as much as my goal. So this pair of Dickies men's pants took 242 days to sell. I originally had it listed for, I think, around $25. I accepted an offer of $15 just because it's been so long. I want to get it moving. And that made my earnings $12. One problem that I see a lot of sellers doing is they see a lot of factors in one piece. So in this case, this was very like utility workwear. It was when Carhartt's still all the rage, but when Carhartt was like at the height of like being super crazy good to sell. So I'm sure this like utility workwear category had them tripped up. Plus it was new with tags, plus it was men's. And so just all of those things, they thought they could make it happen. However, when it comes to factor stacking, not style-based sourcing, but factor stacking in a brand that is easily compable, you should be comping. Comp with those factors in mind and make sure that you've got a good sell-through rate for these pieces. Otherwise, you're going to end up with tons of stuff like this where it's going to sit. So I ended up accepting an offer of $15 to get this to move. Next up, this was one that was attempted to be picked up for style-based reasons. This is a beautiful piece. It actually has a lot of great factors, but it is falling into one of the number one mistakes I see people make when they try to style-base flip items, and that's they don't truly understand the customer. They find factors of like great elements, but when they look at the piece as a whole, they're not understanding that that's not what the customer would want. So there's factors that lead you to the item, but then you have to look at the item as a whole to make sure that it is something that you can sell. So this took 179 days to sell. I accepted an offer of $17. It was initially listed for $25, and that made my earnings only $13.60 on Poshmark. This was picked up because it had a baby doll style to it. It had a kind of a corseted waist here. It had a long bishop sleeve. It was dark floral. All great factors in and of itself. And at the time were actually trending factors. But when we look at the piece as a whole, it's very hard to move this into a very specific trending aesthetic. We use keywords that apply to it, but it's just not what the buyer as a whole is looking for. So we use keywords such as dark cottage core, floral, baby doll, and boho. All of these could fit into that, but none of it as a whole is like heavily leaning into those. And it's just not like a wow factor piece. There are tons of stuff like this online. And so it just got lost in a sea of other things like this. So again, this took around 200 days to sell for $17. All right, and lastly, this was one that we grabbed that we were kind of testing out, this is a popular Y2K brand, which is Hollister. It had some great elements to it. It was low rise. It had a little lace trim at the bottom. It was brown, which was a trending color at the time. But Y2K Hollister Leggings were not what was the category that was trending. It was Y2K tops or Y2K hoodies at the time. And we tried to kind of branch out to test this out to see if it would work. I can tell you that it did not work. Because this took 207 days to sell. It ended up selling for a dropped price of around $20, and that made order earnings on eBay $15.32. Now, I think anything is great to experiment with. If you've never done it before and you want to test out a category such as Y2K leggings instead of Y2K tops, do your research and, try to find the best factors in one piece and test it out. But test it out one time. Don't test it out over and over and over again and never follow up on your result, because that's how you're going to end up with a store of 100 things like this that aren't moving. And that's what I see a lot of resellers doing. So luckily we had the good sense to only test this out one or two times. And in both cases, they did not work out. So this is not something in the brand Hollister that I will be seeking out anymore, and probably, with very few exceptions, not be looking for Y2K leggings really at all. It's just not a category that is performing well. All right, guys, so that's it for what sold last week or the last 2 weeks. I will be caught up now. I will be going on another vacation here in about a month and a half. So there may be another time which we skip a week, but I'll always make sure to catch you guys up. Did you sell something amazing in your store last week? Did something sell quickly or for tons of money? Let me know in the comments down below, because I love hearing about your own stories as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.